right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we are so excited that this September we're kicking off another season, the 2019-2020 season of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So thank you guys so much for joining us, especially as we turn over to a new platform in Zoom. It's been really exciting, and we're so happy to have you guys. We've got 5 classes right now from across North America joining us, so I want to give them a chance to say a little bit of a hello. We've got Miss Olivier, grade 4s in San Antonio, Texas. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey. We've got Miss DeMayo's grade 3s in Naugatuck, Connecticut. Hey, guys. Oh, they're coming in. Hey, guys, in Connecticut. How you doing? Welcome in. They're just working in. Awesome. We've got Miss Crouch's grade 5s in Smithsville, Missouri. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey. Sounds like the audio is working to me. That's excellent. Okay. Or maybe not. We'll find out. We've got Miss LeBlanc's grade 6s in Canada in Ontario. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hey. Our lone Canadian cloud for today. That's exciting. Well, welcome in. And then we've got the group in Flatirons Elementary in Boulder, Colorado. Thank you so much for joining us. There we are.
We're in 4th grade.
Hey, guys. Hey. I love the turtle. They got a turtle in the classroom too. They want you to know that, Teresa. All right. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live in Marathon, Florida by Teresa at the Turtle Hospital. So since 1986, the Turtle Hospital has been working to rescue, rehabilitate, and re-release injured sea turtles. They do a great deal of work in education. And again, they've done more sessions with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants than any other group. So we're always thrilled to have them back. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Teresa, and take it away.
Perfect. So we're going to start here with our big pool with some of our non-releasable turtles. And so sea turtles that are deemed non-releasable are turtles that are completely healthy now, just turtles that cannot survive on their own anymore in the wild. So they just get to stay in captivity, but we have a nice large pool for them. And it is connected directly to the ocean, because one of the perks of being on an island is that the ocean is never very far away. So it's tidal and there's fish. So it's pretty much a more natural part, pretty much more natural tank than we can possibly ever make. So these guys here, these are some of our non-releasable turtles. These are all green sea turtles. And the green sea turtles are the most common species that we see down here. And so they're called green turtles, not because they're green, because they're not, they're brown, but because they're mainly herbivores. So in the wild, they eat lots of seagrass and algae. Here, they get a lot of romaine lettuce, kale, green peppers, lots of green stuff. And they eat so much green stuff that their fat, their insides, turn green. So it's kind of like you are what you eat. Just be glad it does not work that way for us. It'd be all sorts of different colors. But this bunch, these are non-releasable because they have what's known as bubble butt syndrome. And so bubble butt syndrome is what happens when, after they get hit by a boat, that it causes these turtles to float. And floating in a sea turtle is not normal because they eat at the bottom, they sleep at the bottom, they do everything at the bottom. So if they are stuck up at the top, then they really are stuck. Whereas here, even if they float, we won't let them starve. So they're good, but we do try to make it a little bit more comfortable for them. So we do attach lead weight to the outside of their shells. That's why a lot of these guys have little gray circles, typically along their back end. Those are weights. So when they want to, they can go down to the bottom and go to sleep. It's just that eventually those weights fall off. So like the big guy here, that's Kent. He's about 170 pounds. So pretty good sized turtle, but not full grown yet. These greens will eventually get to be about 500 pounds, just about 5 feet long. So still got a lot of growing to do. And that's actually the only way that you can tell how old a sea turtle is based off of their size. Sea turtles never stop growing, so the older the turtle, the larger they are. So a turtle that's Kent-sized, probably about 20 to 25 years old. Whereas a turtle that is emerald sized, Emerald's very pretty, like the gem. That's how she got her name. But she's only about 50 pounds. So maybe only about 10 to 12 years old. So still a juvenile. But even though sea turtles are solitary in the wild, you can still put them together. They just ignore each other, especially the greens, because they're herbivores. So they're not mean, but they just don't care. They'll steal food from each other. They'll knock into each other, but they don't care. Some days it's like they're playing turtle bumper cars. It just makes it kind of fun. But that's okay. But when they're together, that's typically when they're in here, when they're completely healthy. Our patients we keep by themselves. But so we're going to go meet some patients, because our patients all have their own individual tanks. So just like for us, like when we get sick, we have to stay home from work and stay home from school so we don't get everybody else sick. That's the same thing for the turtles. So we'll do Captain Mulligan. So he's typically in his tank, but he just got some medication, so he's got to sit out for a few minutes. And so he's a green sea turtle. He's a juvenile. He's about 30 pounds, but he came into us because he has tumors. So tumors, it's a virus that these green sea turtles get. It's caused by water pollution. It's called fibropapilloma. We call it FP for short, but it causes little growths. So like right there on the edge of his neck, and he's got some on his flipper. So those tumors grow in the soft tissues. So the neck, the flippers, their eyes, which makes it very hard for these turtles to see or to swim. So they have to come in so we can do surgery and remove those tumors. So he has some scabs. So those little sections right around his neck, those are scabs from where he's had previous tumors removed. And so put medication on them to help it heal. Just like with people, if you get a cut, you put Neosporin and a Band-Aid on it. Well, you gotta let it sit on these turtles, because once they go back in water, if it hasn't sat, it's just gonna wash right off, which doesn't really work out very well. But he'll be out of water for, in total, about 10 to 15 minutes, which is okay. They can be out of water up to a few hours, no problem, because they do that to themselves when they nest. If they're going to be out of water for more than a few hours, say for a long surgery day or a long transport day, then we'll rub them down with Vaseline. So that way, even though they're out of the water, they won't get dehydrated or dried out. But 10 to 15 minutes is no problem. But then he'll go back in his water. But lots of little guys. But one of the perks of being right here on the ocean, it's how we get most of our turtles, is from the boaters and the fishermen. So the people that are out there on the water, they see a turtle that doesn't look normal, and then they call us. And then we have an ambulance. We'll go pick that turtle up. And depending on the size of the turtle, depends on whether or not we need to send help. So far, we've met a bunch of greens, because that's the most common species that we get. But we also see quite a few loggerheads. So this is Medea. She's about 190-pound loggerhead, so big turtle. But they're called loggerheads because they have a really, really large head. But she came in because she was hit by a boat. So she's got a lot of damage to the back of her shell. And so she is healing. She's been here since the middle of May, so it is healing, but needs a little bit more time. But with her boat strike, because it has damaged her spine, her rear flippers are now paralyzed, and her butt floats, and it's always floated, odds are pretty good that she's got bubble butt syndrome. So in her case, most likely she will need to stay, because we don't think that floating is going to go away at this point. Because when a turtle is sick, doesn't matter how or why they're sick, if they're sick, they do float. But with her, that floating has never gone away, still floating even at this level of healing, which most likely means that it is bubble butt. But we'll wait till she's completely healed. So a couple more months. But at the moment, she's just taking a nap. When they're sick, they're like us, they just tend to sleep a lot. And when they are sleeping, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. So they can hold their breath a lot longer than we can. But of course, it always depends on the turtle and what's wrong with them. Some are still more active even when they're sick. Like this is one of our little guys, one of our newer turtles, only been here, what, week and a half? Yeah, came in middle of September. This is Koa. She's only 5 pounds. So kind of see if I can get my hand down there. So kind of give you an idea, she's only slightly bigger than my hand. So she is tiny. So probably only about 2, maybe 3 years old. But she was attacked by a shark. And so sharks are one of sea turtles' natural predators, something that they always have to watch out for. And so with sea turtles, their shell is their main protection against predators. And so they cannot pull their heads and their flippers inside their shell like a box turtle can. Their heads and their flippers are always out. But what they'll do is they'll twist and they'll turn. They'll keep their back or their belly to the shark because it makes it a lot harder for the shark to bite them. Think of pinching your hand. You can pinch the side of your hand very easily, but you try to pinch your palm, it's a lot more difficult. Same thing with these turtles and these sharks. So as a result, Koa now has scratches all over her back and all over her belly. She did lose her left front flipper as well, but that's okay. She'll still be able to be released. She'll always look a little bit different. Think of a 3-legged dog, but still be able to do everything that a normal turtle does, but she just has to heal. So she currently has some medication all over her shell. That's why it's kind of a little bit white, because she does have an infection in that shell now. But it's only been a week and a half, so she just needs time. We're estimating it's probably going to take about a couple months, maybe 2 to 3 months, and then she'll get to be released. And hopefully now she knows to stay away from sharks, because she's a very lucky turtle, because she is only 5 pounds, like she is tiny. So if that shark had gotten a hold of the side of her, she would be shark food. But sharks have to eat too. Well, it's one of those kind of weird in-between areas. But one of the kind of interesting turtles that we currently have, this is Maisie. So Maisie does have tumors. So she's already had a few surgeries. We've removed most of her tumors. But she's very pretty. And so even though those tumors are most commonly found in the green sea turtles, it has been found in all species, including hybrids. Maisie is a green hawksbill hybrid, which is not super rare, but it's also not super common either. It does happen, but she has characteristics of both. So one of the main differences is their shell and their head. Because on a green sea turtle, pretty shell, just like the hawksbill, but the scutes of a green sea turtle shell, so the different sections of their shell, kind of fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Whereas on a hawksbill, the scutes overlap like shingles on a roof. Right, so her shell is kind of in between, not as together as a green, but not as overlapping as a hawksbill. And kind of the same thing with her head. Greens have a blunt nose because they eat plants, whereas hawksbills have a very sharp pointed beak, which is how they get their name, because it looks like a bird beak, because they eat sponges and small crustaceans, like small crabs, things like that. So they need a very sharp, hard beak. But her head, kind of in between the two, not as blunt, but not as sharp. And so with hybrids like this, the kind of concern is always what you're going to feed them. Because we know what greens eat, we know what hawksbills eat, we know what loggerheads eat. But with hybrids, you never quite know what they like to eat and can't exactly ask them. So for her, luckily, when she came in, she left us nice little presents in her tank and decided to poop. So we got to go through it and figure out what it was that she had been eating. It turned out it had been bits of sponge and bits of greens. So seagrass, things like that. So, okay, she gets a little bit of everything, a little bit of fish, a little bit of squid, as well as the lettuce and the veggies. And so far, she's doing really, really well. She's been here since beginning of July. So maybe 1, maybe 2 more surgeries, and then she'll be tumor-free. And then she'll start being really, really pretty. Because the green sea turtles and the hawksbills are both the two prettiest of the turtles. Because loggerheads are cute, but you can't really classify them as pretty. They're kind of more handsome than pretty. But we still love them anyways. And then we'll do Splinter, because Splinter is just a really cool turtle. And it's typically the people that find our turtles that get to name them. That's why some of our turtles have some very interesting names. Also why we have a turtle named Flip Flop, Key Lime. But Splinter, they originally wanted to name Shaft, because when Splinter came in, he had a spear stuck in his neck. And that spear had gotten entangled on a crab trap, so he was kind of immobilized at that point. But we were able to get the spear out, which is kind of amazing considering that 2 feet of the spear was inside of him, which is just crazy that he didn't die. But he was a very lucky turtle. It managed to miss everything. It kind of went in at just the right angle to just get lodged in kind of the muscle fatty tissue area. So he has an infection, yes, but not nearly the amount of damage that we were expecting when we first saw him. So that was only 2 weeks ago that he came in, and he's still very active. He's kind of a picky eater, but these larger greens typically are. They tend to be a little bit pickier than their younger little greens. But that's okay. Getting him some seagrass and some lettuce and some veggies, so he's finally starting to eat a little bit. But still estimating probably going to be here for at least another month or so. We have to clear that infection up before he gets released. But he likes to hang out right there where the water comes in because it feels good. It's like the jet of a hot tub. Because they do have nerve endings throughout their shell. So like they can feel things on their shell. So think about rubbing your fingernail. How you can feel that? Well, that's what they feel. And it's not exactly like they can scratch their shells. So we like to give them things that they can either kind of scratch under, because we have to give them water anyways. The water's constantly circulating. But then a lot of our turtles also have toys. So different structures of PVC pipe, so that way they can hide under it or sleep under it, rub their shells up against. Because kind of their default position when they want to take a nap is they try to hide their head. That's one of the reasons why he has his head right up against the wall, because they like to think that if they can't see us, that we can't see them. They're kind of like toddlers in that regard. But that's how they protect themselves when they're sleeping. So if you're ever snorkeling or diving and you see something that kind of looks like a rock, but then it starts to move, that's not a rock, that's a turtle. Because they're very good at camouflage. Okay, time for some questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Teresa. That was marvelous. So yeah, let's dive in. We'll start with Miss Olarides' class. You guys want to kick us off? Come on up. Take your time.
I have a question. Why do female sea turtles lay their eggs on land instead of in the ocean?
Well, sea turtles have to breathe air. They have lungs just like we do. And so that's why they have to come up to the surface to breathe, which is why a lot of the times they do end up getting hit by boats like Medea, because they're coming up to breathe and the boat doesn't always see them coming, and they don't always know that a boat is coming. So by the time they kind of turn around and try to dive down, the boat gets the back end. But if they laid the eggs in the water, those eggs would drown, because those eggs need air too. And so closest area that's land, that's to the ocean, is the beach. And sea turtles will actually return to the same beach that they were hatched from to lay their own eggs. We're not completely sure how they know that, but that's what they do.
Cool.
So they'll sometimes travel for thousands of miles.
All right. Let's take a second question from Miss Tamayo's class. Who's want to come up? Go for it.
How many sea turtles do you save each year?
Every year we typically get in about 100. So far this year we're up to 76. So slightly higher than average for this time of the year. So we'll see what happens the rest of the year. Currently we have 47 turtles. So we have quite a few.
Outstanding. All right, Miss Crouch's group. Guys.
I have a question. How old do turtles get?
Average lifespan's about 70 to 100 years.
Wow.
So pretty long time. And then you tell their age based off of their size. So Medea is a big turtle, probably about 25, 30 years old. Whereas little ones, like little Koa, she's up and about now. Maybe only 2, maybe 3 years old, because she's only 5 pounds. So she's tiny. And now that she's up and about, you can see that she's missing that left front flipper. She just has a little nub, but she still uses that little nub. She still gets around really, really well, even though she only has the 3 flippers. That's why she'll be able to be released.
They grow really fast. If that's a young turtle, and the one that you just showed us was 30 years old or so, you think?
Yeah, that's their main protection when they're younger, is to get as big as they can, as fast as they can. So within the first few years of their life, they go from hatchling, so 2 to 3 inches long, to like dinner plate sized within about 2 years.
Very cool. All right, Miss LeBlanc's class. You guys have one?
Sorry, we can't hear you right. Oh, our speakers aren't working.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Well, we can hear you, but we'll send a message so that you know what we're talking about. Hey, okay. Let's go to Flatirons Elementary then. If you guys have a question, come on up.
Why do sea turtles
attracted to the light? We hear that baby sea turtles kind of go toward moonlight or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or myth?
Yes. Nope, that is true. Because sea turtles are kind of designed to see underwater. So like for people, like you're made to see on land, and when you open your eyes underwater, it's all blurry. With sea turtles, it's kind of the opposite. So underwater, their vision is all clear. Out of the water, that vision is all blurry. So what happens is that when they're on land, the only time they're ever on land is nesting or hatching. When they're on land, their vision is blurry. So they have to go based off of kind of other cues. And so their brains, their instincts tell them that the brightest light should be the ocean. It should be the moon reflecting off of the water. And so they can't tell the difference between the ocean and a flashlight or a car, house, street light. So they just go towards the brightest light, no matter what that light is. And so that's why during the summertime, when it is nesting season, it's very important to keep those lights off because they can't tell the difference. And so it's up to us who can tell the difference to make sure that it is safe for these little guys. Because that's how we end up getting little hatchlings, because we get the ones that don't make it to the ocean, because the ones that sometimes end up in somebody's yard or trying to cross the road, sometimes they'll get stuck at the bottom of their nest. But like this little guy is only about maybe like a week, maybe a week and a half old. So he's tiny. He can't be expected to know everything. So it's our job to kind of help him. And so they'll stay with us because they're not really sick. They're just kind of weak and exhausted. They've used up all of their energy going the wrong direction. So they'll stay with us for about 2 months because like the bigger guy here, he is about a month and a half old. So they do grow pretty fast. So we'll keep them about 2 months, let them get their energy back, and then they'll get to be released. And we'll take them offshore to the floating sargassum seaweed, which is where they're supposed to be.
Outstanding. Well, that was a great answer. And also, since we're all about science here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, I want to say that it is scientifically proven that baby sea turtles are the cutest things in the whole universe. Of all the kids, highlighted that. All right, Miss LeBlanc, let's see if you guys can hear me now, hopefully. I've typed a message too. Any questions, Miss LeBlanc's class? Can you hear me? Maybe kind of.
Maybe have a question.
Yeah.
So now's your chance to ask the question. Ask the question.
Michael,
Loud.
approximately how many turtles do you save a year?
Typically about 100 turtles every year. And that's not including babies. We don't put babies in that count because typically babies between 100 to 200 babies every year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, let's go to Ms. Olavides' class again. Go back through a second round. Come on up, guys.
My question is, what is 3 main reasons that the sea turtles population is decreasing?
Ah, great question.
Most of it has to do with people. Most of the reasons why these turtles come in are all human related, whether it's like direct, like boat strikes, but we also get turtles that get entangled in fishing line and traps and nets, ones that have eaten the trash and the plastic that are now out there just floating. And even the tumors are linked to water pollution. So sea turtles have been around for 200 million years. It's only with people that their populations are now declining, because in some countries it's still legal to eat sea turtles. In the US, sea turtles are protected under the Endangered Species Act. So in the US, it's no longer legal. We'll get in a lot of trouble and go to jail. But not every country has the same rules. So poaching and kind of predation is a lot of it. But then even climate change. Sea turtles are very uniquely suited to their environment because, one, they are reptiles. So they are cold-blooded. They get their body temperature based off of the water temperature. It's one of the reasons why they like Florida and the Keys so much, because it stays pretty warm down here all year round. But nesting wise, they have to be able to nest on the beach. And so if sea levels rise and there's no more beach, there's nowhere for these turtles to nest. And sea turtles are, whether they're boys or girls, is determined on the temperature of the nest. So the warmer the nest, the more girls, cooler the nest, the more boys. Girls are hot, boys are cold. So with like temperature change, we're finding that we're getting more and more girls hatching, which is okay in the short term, but you can't sustain a population that's 90% female. So it's something that we're kind of working on, and a lot of the different universities are kind of studying, because if we need to start incubating eggs and kind of producing more males, we need to kind of figure out how to do that. Sea turtle eggs are a little bit more sensitive than bird eggs, so you have to be a lot more careful with them.
Excellent answer, Teresa, and I'm really glad we got that. That was a really thoughtful question, so thank you so much, guys. All right, Ms. DeMaio's class, if you guys have a second one, come on up.
Did you get a lot of turtles after the hurricane?
Not as many as you expect, because these turtles have been dealing with hurricanes forever. So it's all instinct. So these turtles just know that when they kind of feel a hurricane coming, to just kind of hunker down and ride out the storm, because most of the effects of a hurricane are more surface. Like, they're not going to be down at the bottom of the ocean. But what it does affect are the babies. Because if you get the really strong high tides and storm surge, then it might wash out some of the nests on the beach. Plus, when these little babies do hatch out, they swim offshore to the Gulf Stream, out there to the floating sargassum seaweed, and they'll kind of stay out there for the first couple of years of their life. They'll stay out there kind of floating. So for that kind of what's considered post-hatchlings, so turtles that are up to like 6 months old, sometimes they'll kind of get washed in with the storm. They're considered washbacks at that point. So turtles that are kind of like that little guy sized or just a little bit bigger, not really sick, but just kind of went through a hurricane and are now exhausted. So kind of same thing, that we keep them for just a little while, maybe a month or two, let them get their strength back up, and then we just take them back offshore and kind of wait for the hurricane to be gone. So there's always volunteers, typically volunteers, that will patrol the beaches, because they're the ones that kind of mark the new nests, keep an eye on the nests, and then sometimes help them when they hatch. So they're typically the ones that find these little babies, and they know the babies aren't supposed to be there. So they bring them to us or to the other facilities throughout Florida.
Very cool. All right. Ms. LeBlanc's class, if you guys can hear me, or if Ms. LeBlanc can hear me, you guys have a second question? Go for it, guys.
What turtle was your favorite rescue?
Ooh, your favorite rescue, Teresa.
They're all my favorites.
Yes,
It's like
of
your
course.
favorite type of chocolate. Like, it's all good for slightly different reasons. Some of the more interesting rescue stories are, of course, like the turtles like Splinter, the one with the spear in his neck, because he was kind of interesting because, one, he's a big turtle. Because when they're little, like little Koa's 5 pounds, makes it really easy to rescue her because you just kind of reach over, pick her up. But for Splinter, because he is 150 pounds, the boaters that found him couldn't just pick him up. And that trap line was attached to a crab trap, which weighs about 50 pounds. So we had to call Fish and Wildlife, and so they went out on their boat. And so they ended up pulling the trap on the boat first, kind of cutting the line so that way they could grab the turtle. So like that was kind of an interesting rescue. But most of the rescues are pretty kind of straightforward.
Yeah. It's a testament to how long you guys have been doing this. That there's such a thing as a straightforward rescue of an injured sea turtle in the ocean, but good for you guys. All right, Flatirons Elementary, if you guys have a second one.
Yes, we have 2. Sorry.
Let's do them.
Okay, let's do. Where's your puppet?
Got to take the jacket off and everything. Okay, there's a big question. I'm excited.
Here's the stuffed turtle. Go ahead.
How much food does a sea turtle need each day?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so sea turtles eat on average about 1% to 3% of their body weight a day. So the bigger the turtle, the more they eat. And so we always do try to keep their diets as similar to what they eat in the wild. So like the greens who eat plants, get lettuce and kale and veggies. But like when they're babies like this, they're omnivores. So they eat a little bit of everything. They'll eat the seaweed that they live in, plus the little small crabs and fish and shrimp that live in the seaweed. So here they get a little bit of everything as well. But instead of like crab and shrimp, they get little cut up bits of squid.
Outstanding. And so we'll head right back to that, guys. Oh, you're still muted, my dear.
Just one more
Yeah,
quick
come on
one.
back up and know that you guys get a gold star for the only turtle-based question we've ever had in the history of Exploring by the Sea. There you go. Go for it.
What turtle has lived the longest with you?
Well, our longest resident, let's see if I can find him. He's sometimes very stubborn, is Bubblebutt. The original Bubblebutt. He's been here since 1989. So he's kind of in his mid to late 30s at this point. So he's not our oldest turtle. So our oldest turtle is our biggest turtle, but he's our longest turtle. So let's see if he's hanging out over here with this bunch. Ooh, Rebel popped up. Rebel doesn't always pop up. Rebel's a 240-pound loggerhead. He's got Bubblebutt. And he's got a pretty massive head. I like Rebel. I like all of them. Okay, so let's see. Is Bubblebutt hanging out down here? We've got Bowie, who's our biggest turtle. She's a big girl there. She's about 280 pounds.
Wow.
But no Bubblebutt. Bubblebutt is being very stubborn. One of the good things about this big pool is that it gives them the chance to be a little bit more natural, but it also means that if they're down at the bottom and sleeping, and they don't want to come up, that they're not going to come up. It's very hard to make a sea turtle do something that they don't want to do. Some days it's like herding cats.
Yeah. Well, good luck. If we happen to find Bubblebutt in the middle of the last little bit, by all means, point him out. All right. We'll take one last question from Miss Crouch's class. You guys want to come up? Go for it.
So do you like leave the eggs in the nest, or do you like take them and incubate them?
So here in the Keys, most of our coastline is either coral rock or mangroves. Like you think of Florida, you think of nice, pretty beaches, and that's true for most of Florida, but not for the Keys. So we don't have very many beaches, and most of the beaches that we have are man-made. So the turtles don't always like nesting on them. So we don't get nearly the amount of nests that like the mainland of Florida does. So we've got 150 miles of coastline and maybe like 150, 200 nests every year, which is nothing. The entire state every year typically gets about 100,000 loggerhead nests. So it's a lot of babies. But because we don't get that many and it's kind of spread out, we pretty much leave the nests where they are. The loggerheads, their populations are doing better. They're considered threatened instead of like endangered or critically endangered. So they're still protected, but they're doing better. And that's primarily because Florida is one of the top 2 nesting beaches in the world for loggerheads. So we've been protecting them now since the middle of the 1970s. So good 30, 40 years. So they're doing better. So with the loggerheads, we don't have to go nearly as severely as they do like with the Kempsridleys and some of the turtles that are more critically endangered. So that's pretty much what we get nesting down here, are just the loggerheads.
Well, Teresa, as always, this was fantastic. Before we wrap up, I want to just ask, is there any place that kids can learn more about turtle, more about the work that you guys are doing? Where do we guide them if they're keen to continue on after the session's done?
They can go to our website. It's really difficult. It's turtlehospital.org. We always keep, especially our patients, updated, especially with like new stuff and kind of how their care is going and what's going on. And then, of course, we always are on Facebook. We do a lot of Facebook Live videos as well, because we like people to be able to kind of see what we do every day and what's going on with all of these turtles. Because, yes, there's a lot of people in the Keys that can come visit regularly, but a lot of people that don't live in South Florida, it's a lot harder to visit. So we kind of make it a little bit easier so that way they can at least learn a little bit.
Well, outstanding. And as I said at the beginning of the session too, if you go to turtlehospital.org, you can find out ways to adopt a turtle, contribute to the stuff that the Turtle Hospital is doing. It's really fantastic work. So kudos to Mr. Mayo's class, who's been following up with a lot of stuff that they're doing lately. And I encourage you guys all to check that out and see what they're doing as well. As you know, when we wrap up, I'm going to demute everyone's microphone in just a second. So the first class, Flatiron Elementary, Ms. Allarvini, Mr. Mayo, Ms. LeBlanc, if you guys could join me in saying a huge thank you to Teresa for joining us today. Go right ahead. You're all demuted.
The turtle.
Guys.
We should do it.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you all soon. Teresa, we'll see you shortly as always, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Hope you guys can join us in October too as we do even more amazing sessions.